The year was 1790, and the small village of Jenkinsville, nestled in the heart of Middle America, lived in peaceful ignorance. The townsfolk, hardworking and close-knit, went about their daily lives, unaware of the impending horror that lurked in the shadows. The horror of the hills, an ancient and malevolent shape-shifting entity, had chosen this unsuspecting village as its hunting ground. It began innocently enough, with whispers of strange sightings and eerie sounds echoing through the hills surrounding Jenkinsville. At first, the villagers dismissed these tales as mere superstitions, attributing them to the wild imaginations of those who wandered too far into the woods. Little did they know that the horror of the hills was already among them, silently observing, waiting for the opportune moment to reveal its true nature. As the moon cast an eerie glow over the village, the first signs of the entity's presence manifested. Livestock disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only disturbed soil and a lingering sense of dread. Unexplained howls and unearthly cries echoed through the night, sending shivers down the spines of the bravest souls in Jenkinsville. Rumors spread like wildfire, and fear took root in the hearts of the villagers. They gathered in hushed whispers, speculating about the origin of the malevolent force that haunted their once peaceful home. Some believed it to be a curse brought upon the land, while others whispered of vengeful spirits seeking retribution for sins long forgotten. As the weeks passed, the horror of the hills grew bolder, emerging from the shadows to terrorize the village openly. It reveled in its ability to shift forms, taking on the guise of the villagers' worst nightmares. One night, it appeared as a monstrous wolf, its eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intelligence as it prowled through the streets, leaving destruction in its wake. Panic spread through Jenkinsville like a contagious disease. The townsfolk, once united, now turned on each other in fear and suspicion. Every shadow became a potential hiding place for the shape-shifting entity, and trust crumbled like ancient ruins. The village that once thrived on unity and camaraderie now faced an existential threat that eroded the very foundations of its existence. Desperation drove the villagers to seek out the guidance of those rumored to possess knowledge of the supernatural. The local wise woman, an enigmatic figure who lived on the outskirts of the village. She listened to their tales of horror with a knowing gaze, her wrinkled face betraying the weight of centuries of wisdom. "There is a darkness that dwells in these hills," she warned, her voice a mere whisper. "It is ancient, and its hunger for chaos knows no bounds. You must face it together, for divided, you will fall." Driven by a newfound determination, the townsfolk gathered whatever weapons they could muster. Pitchforks, torches, and crude swords became their arsenal against the unseen terror that plagued them. With a shaky resolve, they formed a ragtag militia, ready to confront the horror of the hills head-on. The night chosen for the confrontation was thick with tension. A blood-red moon hung low in the sky, casting an ominous glow over Jenkinsville. The air was heavy with the stench of fear as the villagers marched towards the hills, guided by the wise woman's cryptic instructions. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the oppressive darkness closed in around them. The rustling of leaves and the distant hooting of owls seemed to merge into a cacophony of impending doom. The wise woman led them to the heart of the hills, where an ancient grove stood as a gateway to the malevolent force that plagued their village. Suddenly, the night fell silent, and an otherworldly chill permeated the air. The horror of the hills materialized before them, its form shifting like a mirage. A towering figure with eyes that glowed like embers surveyed the intruders with a malicious intelligence. The wise woman stepped forward, her eyes meeting those of the ancient entity. "We seek to end the curse that has befallen our village. Release us from your grip, foul creature, and let peace return to these lands." A guttural laughter echoed through the grove, chilling the villagers to their bones. "Peace is but an illusion, mortals," the entity hissed, its voice a sinister melody. "I am the harbinger of chaos, the embodiment of your deepest fears. You cannot escape what lurks within your own hearts." With a wave of its hand, the horror of the hills unleashed its true power. Shadows twisted and contorted, forming grotesque creatures that slithered and crawled towards the villagers. The air crackled with malevolence as the nightmarish entities closed in, their eyes glinting with a hunger for the souls of the living. The battle that ensued was a symphony of screams and clashing metal. The townsfolk fought valiantly, driven by the desperate need to protect their homes and loved ones. Yet, with each strike against the shape-shifting entity, it laughed in defiance, its form morphing and regenerating with unnatural resilience. Hours passed, and exhaustion set in among the villagers. Their weapons dulled, their bodies battered, they began to realize the futility of their struggle. The horror of the hills reveled in their despair, taunting them with whispers that echoed in the recesses of their minds. Just as hope seemed lost, the wise woman chanted an ancient incantation, invoking the spirits of the land. The grove trembled, and the air crackled with mystical energy. The horror of the hills roared in defiance, its form contorting and convulsing as it resisted the ancient magic that sought to bind it. In a blinding flash of light, the entity was momentarily immobilized. The townsfolk seized the opportunity, rallying their dwindling strength for a final assault. Torches flared, pitchforks pierced the air, and the sound of battle reached a crescendo that echoed through the hills. However, the horror of the hills was not so easily defeated. With a burst of ethereal energy, it broke free from the mystical chains that sought to bind it. The grove trembled, and a primal force surged through the entity, empowering it with an unholy vigor. The wise woman, weakened by the strain of her incantation, looked at the villagers with sorrowful eyes. "I have done all I can. The rest is up to you." Undeterred, the townsfolk pressed on, their determination unwavering. But the horror of the hills, now infused with newfound strength, retaliated with a ferocity that bordered on the demonic. Shadows danced and twisted, forming nightmarish creatures that swarmed the villagers, tearing at flesh and soul alike. As the battle raged on, the grove itself seemed to rebel against the intrusion. Ancient trees uprooted themselves, their gnarled roots lashing out like serpents, ensnaring the weary combatants. The very earth beneath their feet trembled, as if rejecting the presence of both the villagers and the malevolent entity that had stirred its depths. Amidst the chaos, a lone figure emerged from the shadows, a young woman with haunted eyes and a determination that transcended mortal fear. It was Emily, the daughter of the village blacksmith, who had lost her family to the horrors that befell Jenkinsville. In her hand she clutched a relic passed down through generations, a blade forged from an otherworldly metal, said to possess the power to vanquish supernatural evil. With a silent prayer on her lips, Emily charged towards the horror of the hills, her blade gleaming with an ethereal light. The entity, sensing the threat, turned its attention towards Emily. Shadows converged around her, but she pressed on with unwavering resolve. The clash between the mortal and the immortal unfolded in a dance of blades and shadows, each strike resonating with the weight of generations. In a moment of sheer determination, Emily drove the otherworldly blade deep into the heart of the horror of the hills. A shockwave rippled through the grove, shaking the very foundations of the ancient hills. The entity convulsed, its form contorting and writhing in agony. As the villagers watched in awe, the horror of the hills let out a final, guttural scream that echoed through the night. Shadows dispersed, and the malevolent force that had plagued Jenkinsville for so long dissipated into the ether. The grove fell silent, the air heavy with the scent of victory and the lingering echoes of a battle fought on the precipice of existence. Exhausted and battered, the townsfolk gathered around Emily, who stood amidst the remnants of the supernatural struggle. The wise woman approached, her eyes filled with a mix of admiration and sorrow. "You have faced the darkness within and without," she whispered to Emily. "But remember, the line between light and shadow is thin, and the horrors that lurk within the human heart are oftentimes more insidious than those that dwell in the hills." With those cryptic words, the wise woman disappeared into the shadows, leaving the villagers to contemplate the cost of their victory. Jenkinsville, once a haven of peace, now bore the scars of a battle that transcended the mortal realm. In the aftermath, the villagers slowly began to rebuild their lives, haunted by the memories of the horror that had befallen them. The grove, once a gateway to malevolence, became a somber reminder of the fragile balance between the seen and the unseen. As the years passed, the tale of the horror of the hills faded into the annals of village lore. Some dismissed it as a cautionary fable, while others clung to the belief that the shadows that lurked in the hills were never truly vanquished. The once thriving village of Jenkinsville, scarred by the echoes of that fateful night, learned to live with the knowledge that the line between reality and nightmare was a thin and treacherous veil.